Of Lumberjack Logic Live. I'm your host, Neil Johnson. Excited to be with you. Excited to share the news with you. Agent Orange, I saw that comment. Fashionably late, I am. But I was just bringing up, I actually got caught up in watching a video about whether venison is better in an ice bath or dry. And I had to just get to the results of it because I had pulled up all the articles already for this. But I did find one other interesting news piece. By the way, folks, do you want to know who won? Was it the dry ice, or was it the dry venison or the ice bath venison? You know, because when you get venison, you go get it out in the field, you got to chop it up, put it in a cooler so you keep it cool. Which one did better? That in directly into the ice or the stuff that was dry? Do me a favor, smash that like, chat in with where you're from, and we'll get right into this because we've got a great story for you here. Michelle had actually forwarded something about this to me earlier today, and then that caused me to further dig into this so I could bring you some good news on it. George is afraid of a hike, folks. James answered with dry. There was actually no difference. No difference in tenderness, no difference in taste. All right, so here we go. I'm going to pull from NPR because there's nothing like hearing a good lefty outlet melting down over the fact that we're trying to secure our elections. And another point I need to make on this case. So this case from Illinois. This is Congressman Michael Bost. And Michael Bost, I will have you know, has an F score on the Liberty score, okay? And so you guys know, he is basically a rhino who is winning this case for us right here. Rhino. So, folks, typically, is it better to have a rhino or a Democrat in Congress? That's my question for you here. Rhino or Democrat, which is better? So the Liberty score, this guy is an F. Lame duck budget busting spending bill. They gave him a down position, forcing states to redefine marriage, threaten religious liberty. He's got a down vote there. Passed the $700 billion so-called Inflation Reduction Act. He's got a down there. I mean, he is failing in so many of these things, okay? But he did want to end federal control of local schools. So he got an upvote there. So here's the problem. I mean, if you have committees run by Democrats because you have Democrats in there, as opposed to having some of these rhinos are in really weak districts. So he did bring this suit we're going to talk about today. But the justices at the Supreme Court, why did this seem willing to allow candidate to challenge elections law on mail-in ballots. So this revolves around the whole issue of standing. Folks, what were we always told during the 2020 election? There were two key terms that we were constantly denied the ability to have our cases heard in court back in 2020 surrounding that event, and that was latches and standing. Now, folks, standing means you have the ability to bring the case because it causes you harm. My trivia question for you all in my audience, we were always told we had no standing, but we were also, our cases weren't heard because of latches. Now, folks, what does latches center around? That's the Lumberjack Logic trivia question today, because this made it a double whammy, an impossible situation. Because first they hit us with latches, then they hit us with standing. So what was exactly, Crash Bandit? Timing. So what happened was, people were saying, well, wait, they should have brought the cases before the election. Well, then we were told there was no harm, and so the timing wasn't right. So we were denied based on latches. These are all procedural crap, okay? And then we're told after the fact that we didn't have standing. Now, if you or I, as citizens of the country who feel our vote has been diluted, don't have standing, then who does? Well, apparently, Michael Bost does. Listen to this. Well, here, let me start with the NPR article. So, U.S. Supreme Court hears boss challenge of Illinois mail-in ballot law. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments Wednesday, so yesterday these arguments were heard, in an Illinois Republican congressman's case challenging a state law on mail-in ballots. In 2022, U.S. Representative Mike Bost, Republican of Murfreesboro, sued over an Illinois law allowing mail-in ballots to count up to 2 weeks after they arrive at a local election authority. The ballots still have to be postmarked on or before election day to count. How many fake postmarks do you think they've got? Seriously, let me read this again. The Illinois law allows mail-in ballots to count up to 2 weeks after they arrived at the local election authority. Now, folks, can I just, a serious question. Why would you need 2 weeks to count ballots that arrive at the local election authority? Why would you need 2 weeks? Okay? Why? Well, give me one good reason why you would need 2 weeks to count ballots. Okay? Exactly. Thank you. Those of you answering in the chat, smash that freaking like, please. Because this is the kind of news, I'm telling you, people are forgetting about this. God help us all. If we forget about what happened in 2020 and we do not correct the situation, we are going to see it again. We're going to see it again. Please, for the love of all things holy, I hope you understand how important this is. Again, please chat in with where you're from if you just jumped on the stream. That'll help as well. All right. Those unlawful ballots could cost Congressman Bost the election, or at least reduce his margin of victory, and he has to pay his campaign staff for an extra 2 weeks, said Paul Clement, one of Bost's attorneys. This is in his arguments before the Supreme Court. Lower courts, folks, had already ruled that Bost did not have standing to bring the lawsuit, primarily because he couldn't prove that the law hurt his ability to get elected. Except for real. Clement said that the opinion was wrong-headed because it needlessly injects federal courts into the role of political prognosticators. He's right. All of a sudden, oh, wait, you're telling the court's just saying, well, come on. That doesn't hurt his ability to get elected. How can they do that unless they actually hear the case? It risks denying judicial access to minor party candidates, and it shuffles election disputes into the closest races and the worst possible context, election disputes after the election, where federal courts are in the uncomfortable position of having to pick the political winners, Clement said. There is a better way, and it simply requires acknowledging that candidates have a unique, concrete, and particularized interest in the rules of the electoral road. Seriously, if you as a candidate don't have the right to bring these cases, first off, we as citizens should be able to. My gosh, I see something up here. Is that a $50 super from Tech Flood? Jeez, all Friday. Thank you. That's awesome. I'm hitting a heart on that. Thank you very much, Tech Flood. Okay, so Justice Elena Kagan, though, said the lawsuit is in search of a problem, but it's going to get better here because Elena Kagan is going to flip. Okay, now this is NPR. I told you, I was reading to you from NPR, so they're going to present this in a way that's favorable to them, but watch. Elena Kagan says, every battleground state, we get to see how litigation plays out, asserting that a new rule is invalid for some reason or another, Kagan said. And those suits are never tossed because of standing, because they are easy assertions to make in a complaint about why a new rule is going to hurt you in the electoral process. So they are saying, NPR, that because she said that she's opposed to this. Just wait. Illinois Solicitor General Nancy Noltz told the justices that if Boss' challenge is successful, folks, here we go. Wait. Because you people who have followed my channel, since November of 2020, when this whole deal went down, when I actually started this channel in earnest, okay? Because before it was just the YouTube channel I used to watch videos, okay? And then I started making videos in November of 2020, okay? What do you think, my lovely loyal audience, what do you think that the Solicitor General, Nancy Noltz, told the justices would happen if Boss' challenge was successful? You guys know, because what would this do? Or what crazy things would happen if, God forbid, Boss is given standing and is successful in his challenge to say, my word, you can't count ballots 2 weeks after the election. Come on, help me out. I know you guys are going to get, somebody else supered me. What the? That's $50 too. Derek Graham, this is their 5th super on a live stream. Derek Graham, thank you so much. That's huge. Huge, Derek. Thank you. They might lose the seat. Nope. Yes, they remember they took away your video and followed you. Okay? Overturn the election. No, check. This is what they always say. Here it is. It would cause chaos for election officials while saddling federal courts with resolving abstract policy disputes. His invocation of the possibility of a reduced margin of victory fails at the start, Knott said. Boss' desire to run up the score is not a concrete injury that history and tradition shows can support standing to sue. More specifically, Knott said that Boss' likelihood of losing re-election because of this new law is remote, given he's consistently won re-election since the 1990s, and the 12th congressional district is strongly Republican. We are dealing with a very experienced and successful candidate, she says. Now, that drew skepticism from Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Now, here's the thing. We're going to go back here. Tell me, folks. Think about this logically. Oh my gosh, Andra, thanks for that $10 super. Okay, check this out, though. This is really awesome. Tell me how, if you did not have to count ballots 2 weeks after the election, how that would cause chaos for election officials. Oh, how is that going to happen? Wouldn't that actually take away chaos from election officials? Wouldn't it make their job easier if they weren't counting 2 weeks after the election? This is the Illinois Solicitor General, their counsel, giving her reason why this shouldn't happen. It would be the fall of democracy. That's right, Chet. Stop. Okay, so if Boss is successful and we no longer have to count ballots 2 weeks after the election, that's it. Democracy fails, and it would cause chaos for election officials. Oh my gosh. What kind of liberal lunacy is this? What kind of loopholes do you have to jump through to come up with such a bizarre legal argument? How can this gal be the Solicitor General for Illinois and come up with this pathetic of a legal argument? My question here, I have a real question for you too. How in the world does this Boss guy, why is he such a rhino with a 50%? But again, he brought this case and he's winning for us. So let's give Boss a hand clap, please. In the clap, give him a hand clap. I do not want to make light of what he has done here, even though he's a rhino and he's had plenty of bad votes. He's one of these go-along, get-along Republicans. But he's voting the right way now because the Republican caucus is sticking together for the most part, right? So, except for Marjorie Taylor Greene, seems to be off her rocker these days, saying that Republicans are responsible for the shutdown when all the Democrats have to do is get 60 votes in the Senate, okay? But I'm gonna pull off of Okay, well, here, let me give you the comments from Justice Brett Kavanaugh. When you run an election for 30 years and win, sometimes you act as if you have no risk of losing, Kavanaugh said. And you know what happens? Then you lose. Okay? Chief Justice John Roberts also took issue. Chief Justice John Roberts is on our side. This is getting weirder by the second. Chief Justice John Roberts also took issue with the position that candidates only have standing if they're running in a close election, adding that you're sketching out for us is a potential disaster. In other words, you're saying if the candidate is going to win by 65%, they've got no standing. But if the candidate you know hopes to win by a dozen votes, then there are places in the country where that happens over and over again. Then he has standing. Think about the logic of that. I tell you what, John Roberts, I'm not a fan, but he's nailing this one. But we're not going to know until we get very close to the election, right? And so it's going to be in the middle, the most fraught time for the court to get involved in electoral politics. And he's right. This is why the Supreme Court was constantly running from these cases before and using things like latches and standing. It really boiled down to the fact that they just didn't want to have that kind of decision because they didn't want to be viewed as being political. Okay? Now, I'm going to read to you from the SCOTUS blog about this. A little different than the NPR analysis. Justices seem willing to allow candidates to challenge elections law on mail-in ballots. At Wednesday's argument in Boss versus Illinois Board of Elections, not many of the justices worked hard to hide their cards. It appears there's a substantial majority, most likely 7 justices, leaning toward reversing the lower federal court's holding that Representative Michael Bost, a Republican member of Congress, lacked a legal right to sue, known as standing, to challenge an Illinois law allowing mail-in ballots postmarked by election day to be counted, even if they arrive as many as 14 days later. Why on earth would we have... This is why we need to do away with mail-in ballots, folks. This is why I've had Mike Lindell on constantly. We're always talking about this, and right now we got that big win in Texas. If you didn't see that last stream I did about Texas, Venezuela, China, you need to watch it, because we went over all of this. But the fact is, down in Texas right now, the primaries in one of the largest counties, I think it might be the largest county in the state of Texas, that's Dallas County, is going to paper ballot, same day, hand counted for the Republican primary. And you say, well, Neil, that's only the primary. The primaries are oftentimes where this stuff happens, especially in their safe Republican districts. Okay? It is much easier to get a rhino out during the primaries than it is to get a rhino out during the general election if they're in a 65-35 district. Make sense? Okay? All right. Again, please smash that like 1,100 or beyond, 643 likes. Let's get this out to some more people. All right. In federal courts, plaintiffs only have standing to sue if they properly allege that the challenged action or law causes them concrete and particularized injury in fact. Plaintiffs are not allowed to challenge laws in federal court on the ground that they are citizens or even taxpayers. I wonder if illegals would have the right to challenge. I mean, they could have a particularized injury in fact, and we're constantly told that it applies to persons, not citizens. The Constitution, that's what they're telling us all the time. They'd probably give illegals standing to sue on the grounds of elections because they're being misrepresented, underrepresented. Gosh, the lunacy of these things we read on a day-to-day basis coming out of our federal government should give you all pause. All right. Again, hey, really quickly, I mentioned Mike Lindell. Go support him because he's facing it day in, day out. You can go to MyPillow/Lumberjack or call the 800 number at 1-800-568-2865. Again, that's 1-800-568-2865. Michelle will post that in the chat for you. $29.88, any color, any size per KL sheets right now. When they're gone, they're gone. Okay, go get some. And the towels are in, which they're always out because they sell so well, because they're the best towels known to man. All right. Former U.S. Solicitor General Paul Clement, arguing for Bost, opened up boldly proposing a rule that would recognize standing for any candidate to challenge any material change in the way an election will be conducted, especially how and when votes are to be counted. Justice Elena Kagan resisted Clement's proposal of what may be called candidate standing. Okay, so this is where Kagan, you're going to hear. I want you to listen to this closely because this is Elena Kagan. Okay, she starts out this way. She said, "It's not enough just to walk in and say, 'Hi, I'm a candidate and I'm suing,'" said Kagan. "You have to show some kind of substantial risk that the new rule puts you at an electoral disadvantage relative to the old rule." Kagan went on, though, to reveal more of her thinking. "On the other hand, I'm sort of in sympathy with the view that this bar should not be all that high. You shouldn't have to say, 'Here are the polls that show I could lose as a result of this rule.' This position that candidates should not have to prove that the challenged law might cause them to lose an election they otherwise would probably win appeared to separate Kagan from Justices Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson." I'm going to tell you something, folks. If you ever see in the Supreme Court an 8-1 decision, who is the dissenter? If you ever see an 8-1 decision coming out of the Supreme Court, who is the dissenter? Who's the biggest idiot on the Supreme Court right now? Come on. I'm asking, man. Marilyn says the Giza sheets are the best I've had in all my 71 years. And she's right. Go get some Giza sheets over there at mypillow.com/lumberjack. Exactly. Ketanji Brown Jackson. Absolutely 100%. She does not know what a woman is. She doesn't know anything. Okay? I have watched her mental gymnastics in different court opinions, and I'm like, what the heck? I mean, there's no way she should be sitting on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, the highest court in the land, the most prestigious court in the world, and she's sitting on there? Are you kidding? Okay? Sotomayor is better than her. Kagan is better than her. Ketanji Brown Jackson is a fool. An absolute idiot. I can't with that woman. Okay? So of course she would take the wrong position. She said she could not see Bust having standing because even he repeatedly admitted that the 14-day rule could not conceivably cause him to lose what is currently considered a safe congressional seat for Republicans. So again, going back to Robert's previous argument on this, so what are we supposed to do to determine standing? Take a poll ahead of time? Have polls ever been wrong? I mean, is that what we're supposed to do? The court's supposed to now start doing polls to determine who has standing and who doesn't in election challenges? And then what if the poll is off by 21 points or 14 points? You know, like the Des Moines Register poll, okay, that we famously saw in the last election that said that Donald Trump was going to lose Iowa. You guys remember this? And polls can be that far off the mark, okay? Or I'll give you another example. There was a poll just recently in the governor's race for New Jersey that had the Republican, who's almost in a dead heat right now, losing by 21 points. 21 points when the real spread is 3. Do any of you see how that would work? Okay, let's just have some polls before the election to determine whether or not they have standing. We'll present that information to the court, and hopefully the poll's right. Well, you know what I would do? I would get one of these 21-point skewed polling companies and have them rig a poll for me. I mean, why not? They do it all the time before elections. Why not rig it so you can get yourself into the Supreme Court? Gosh, this is so stupid. Jackson and Sotomayor, the second dumbest judge, both said that. Although there seemed to be little appetite for Clement's unabridged candidate standing proposal, several justices seemed comfortable with Kagan's view that it would suffice if candidates properly alleged that the challenged law likely puts them at electoral disadvantage relative to the old rule. Seems reasonable. So you have a rule, the old rule. You take the new rule, and it puts you at some sort of disadvantage. You're a candidate. You have standing. Does that make sense to everybody? Do y'all think that maybe should be the way that this works to determine standing, not whether or not it's a 2-point race? Because how do you determine that? And then what are you going to do? Decide it right before the election? It's so dumb. Like, okay, I don't know how many of you in my audience have a college education, how many have a high school education, or how many dropped out before high school. But I think that the majority of people in my audience can make a better decision than Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor on this issue, right? I mean, this makes sense to all of you, right? We shouldn't have to have polls before to determine standing. Okay. Justice Neil Gorsuch, for example, asked Clement, if you could just answer whether you could satisfy Justice Kagan's standard, as I understand the question, it doesn't require a competitive disadvantage. It just says, compared to the law, what I understand the law to have been, I am at a disadvantage. Clement responded that Boss could satisfy that standard for two reasons. First, he believed the rule imperiled his margin of victory. And second, he had to spend more money on poll watchers and monitors during the additional 14 days. So this bizarre rule that says you can count 2 weeks after Election Day would have him having poll watchers that he had to pay for an additional 2 weeks, which would then pull money from him actually trying to get votes, get out the vote efforts, chase it, do different advertising to highlight his benefit. Do you all see, right? Totally makes sense. Okay. Again, thank you people for your super chats today. I mean, $2 $50 super chats. Thank you. Super stickers. And then a $10 one on top of that. Thank you. Even Illinois Solicitor General Jane Knotts, arguing for the Board of Elections, told Kagan that she would have no problem with Kagan's suggested test. I actually don't think we would have any problem at all with that rule, Knotts said. I think the problem is that based on the facts that he has alleged, Congressman Boss can't show standing based on that rule, asserted Knotts. Well, we just discussed why he had. Now, this is what's so interesting. So I've got another really great news story for you, folks. I'm going to throw in a bonus for you. So just hang with me to the end of this. Okay. But it's really a great story. It's dealing with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. But here we go. I read you from NPR, and now I'm reading you from SCOTUS blog. And if you've never read SCOTUS blog, they're pretty impartial. They just kind of put it out there and say, this is what SCOTUS is thinking. So we're looking at a 7-2 decision to move this forward is what it looks like is going to come down. Okay, we know Clarence Thomas is on board. We know Neil Gorsuch is on board. We know most likely Brett Kavanaugh is on board. And now it appears that Roberts is on board. And I haven't seen anything in here from our favorite conservative female justice, but hopefully she can make a right decision. Okay. Anyhow, Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Jackson, seemingly from opposite sides of the aisle concerning the disposition of the case, immediately jumped on that. You're walking away from a lot of your brief there, Kavanaugh warned Knotts. Yes, you are, added an obviously concerned Jackson. Later, Jackson gave her a chance to walk back her agreement with Kagan. I mean, Jackson was so concerned because the Solicitor General of Illinois actually gave it up and threw it out the door. But isn't that wild how NPR reports this and tries to make it seem like it's not going to happen when in reality, or well, that these other liberal justices aren't on board, when it looks like there's only 2 liberal justices who aren't willing to move this ahead. This is going forward, folks. Boss will be granted standing. And I am telling you, this Democrat cheat machine relies on a lot of things. Okay, it relies on a lot of things. I talked yesterday to you about the census. That lawsuit is up there now. So, okay. So, for those of you who are new to my channel, I'm sure that some of you out there are new on here. We talk a lot about elections, election chicanery, fraudulent activities, things of that nature. I started this channel in November of 2020. I've been featured in a Media Matters hit piece because we talked about this at length. I have been struck, demonetized, all those different things from YouTube in the past. Now it seems like we're okay to talk about this now. It's unbelievable. But the channel was almost wiped out 3 times. Okay. Now here's the thing. They steal elections in multiple different ways. One of which is the US Census. So if you didn't see my live on this, you should probably go back and take a look at that. But we are currently down minimally about 5 Republican seats just due to a faulty 2020 census that utilized AI and algorithms to boost blue states and decrease red states, which also, affects the electoral college vote for the president. Okay. So that's gone on. On top of that, you have illegals being counted in the census. That would cost Democrats like another 20 seats because they're all centralized, those population centers. So most illegal immigrants are in large population centers. So those are blue cities typically. So that there causes a big issue. Then on top of that, we have the filling the voter rolls with dirty data. This is why Donald Trump, and so I talked about that judge's house being on fire the other day, and everybody jumped to conclusions because the judge had defied President Trump. This was in North Carolina on handing over the information on the voter rolls. And what's this super sensitive information, folks? The last 4 of your social, your driver's license number, your address, simple things that the government already has on you. But the question is, on those voter registration cards, is that valid data, or are those illegal aliens, or are those dead people? Because Gretchen Whitmer and her trifecta of evil in the state of Michigan, okay, that's Nessel and Benson, did that thing before the election where they added over 500,000 people to the voter rolls in 2020. I went up and looked on the Michigan Secretary of State website. I looked up dead people who had died in 1980s who had voted. The most egregious one was somebody who had ordered a ballot on October 31st, but it somehow voted on October 30th. Now, people, if you can tell me how somebody can go online and order a ballot to be sent to their house on October 30th, yet vote on October 31st, is when they ordered the ballot, but somehow they voted on October 30th. Explain that to me, please. I want to see this. Maybe I've got some lefties on here right now. How do you order a ballot on October 31st and vote on October 30th and you're dead? How does that work? How does that part of the equation work? Okay, so it's some paranormal activity, and I guess the paranormal activity somehow created a false entry. Do you see how stupid this stuff is? Okay. So they have to then take those people. That's why there's a video of the van driving into the TCF center at 3 a.m. well after the legal hours of ballots being turned in the state of Michigan. It's all on camera. It's right from the frickin' TCF security cameras. You can't. I'm sorry. I've gone down this road too much. I looked into all this. Even the 2022 gubernatorial election in Arizona, where the guy perjured himself on stand from one day to the next, and I covered videos on that, and that got me almost wiped out, demonetized, and all that crap. So something's amiss here. And I don't know how all these decisions work all the time. I do not believe, folks, let me hear me out on this. I do not believe that there is a grand cabal that directs every single person to do every single thing. That gets Fruit Loopy to me. I believe that as a society, we've become so corrupted that it's everywhere, okay? And so it's not hard to see this happen. Joseph Delbagno, wrecked. Thank you so much for that. I like the laughing hippo or whatever that was. So, so they would do that. So the only way you can do that is with mail-in ballots, because you have to have some mechanism to then insert those through drop boxes or mail-in ballots. You have to find those votes from somewhere. That's why we saw, they weren't suitcases, right? They were legitimate election boxes coming out under the table after they kicked everybody out of the State Farm Arena down in Georgia. Now, this is the problem with central count voting. This is why we need to go back to localized, individualized precincts. Mike Lindell has covered this so well, folks. I know some people think Mike Lindell is goofy. They think all these different things. No, Mike Lindell is a fearless, fun. I've traveled with the guy. He is fun. He's a patriot, and I love him. So please go support him. mypillow.com/lumberjack or call 1-800-568-2865. Go get some Giza sheets. You will love them. Okay? Go support him. Seriously. And you get to support the show. It's a win-win. Okay? One issue that particularly troubled Kavanaugh was that of remedy. When Michael Talent, an assistant to the Solicitor General, took the lectern to argue on behalf of the federal government, Kavanaugh asked, if there isn't standing for these kinds of challenges to ballot receipt deadlines for the U.S. House elections pre-election, and they're all forced post-elections, what does that look like next November or December? This is a great question that Brett Kavanaugh asked, because we know that post-election, okay, we couldn't do anything. All right? So Kavanaugh's asking the question, if there isn't standing for these kinds of challenges to ballot receipt deadlines for the U.S. House of Elections, pre-elections, and they're all forced post-elections, what does that look like next November and December? Talent agreed that a rule against standing in this case would have that effect. That is, to force such litigation into the post-election context. And he further warned that an outcome determinative test for standing in election cases would leave only the major parties able to litigate, meaning that third-party candidates could not litigate. And if the deadlines were found to be unlawful, have you thought ahead to what remedy would be? Kavanaugh followed up, because if we're not thinking about that ahead of time, we're going to walk into something. Talent did not mince his words. I can't imagine it would be easy or good to determine, he answered, because nobody wants the courts then deciding elections ex post facto, because we want secure elections ahead of time where we can have confidence in the vote. All right? Sonoma, just go away. What's that, Michelle? Is this some liberal troll? All right, folks, actually, I'm so excited. I got to tell you something that I'm very excited about. I've been looking through comments and seeing comments in the chat as it goes through. I'm seeing more liberals seeing this show. And folks, I actually like it. I know you're going to think I'm goofy. No. I actually like it because liberals are getting a different perspective. Okay, I was referring to a comment he deleted. That's fine. But I'm just telling you, I've seen more liberals commenting on this channel, and do you guys get why I would be excited about this? Look, we are forced, basically, if we turn on our TV, to listen to liberal news. Okay. Liberals actually getting this populated into their feed, listening to a little lumberjack logic. Come on, is that good or bad? Good or bad, folks? Liberals getting to watch a little lumberjack logic. All right, I told you I'd give you a bonus story, so here it is. Robbie Starbuck. So I don't know if you guys had heard about this, but the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga had denied Turning Point USA from becoming an official registered student organization on campus. Had you guys all heard about this? Okay. This is big. The University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, this is in Tennessee, folks. Come on. This isn't some bastion of liberalism. And they were denying Turning Point USA from becoming an official registered student organization on campus. And they did this because they said it was racist, and it was offensive. Well, here's what happened. It created an outcry, a big uprising. And Robert Barnes actually said that he would sue on the kids' behalf. There were people who had donated to the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, who said they were pulling funding and all that. Well, Robbie Starbuck was able to confirm this morning that TPUSA chapter at UTC Chattanooga has been approved now, and the school overruled the Student Government Association, who tried to stop the chapter formation. So Turning Point USA has a new chapter. Again, there's been over 70,000 new chapter inquiries at Turning Point USA since Charlie Kirk's death, and we are seeing a great revival. One thing I found to be really interesting is my X feed has actually turned into a lot of people talking about the Bible, worship songs, this kind of stuff. And one of my biggest complaints about X has always been the porn bots. So it is really wonderful to see that happening on the platform. Michelle, I know you're on X. I mean, have you noticed that as well? Because I'm seeing more and more. Now, granted, I follow some Christian people. Like I follow the JC Ryle account, which is a great one. I get so much good information off that. But it is very sad. Yeah, Michelle's seen that too. It's very sad that Charlie's gone. Again, please go check out my sponsor, MyPillow, mypillow.com/lumberjack. Free shipping right now, folks. Free shipping. Okay, that's a big deal at MyPillow. Okay, huge. Free shipping. 6-piece towel sets are back in stock. They are the best towels you'll ever use. They are only $39.98. I'm telling you, now my 3 favorite products. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The towels, the travel pillows, Giza sheets. If you have those 3 products, they will change your life. I use the travel pillow wherever I go. I go 63 years old and cry like a baby. Yeah, I know, you're crazy, Uncle. I was talking actually with a rancher out in Montana when I was out elk hunting, and I talked to him every year, and he was so upset about Charlie Kirk's death too. So many people were. How can you take somebody who just went on campuses and debated? I mean, he did not. Look, we are seeing the left doing all kinds of nasty, dastardly things. They're falling apart. They're losing their mind because they're losing. And they openly talk about murdering people. These are not sane people, okay? Oh, the slippers are awesome. They're only $39.98 right now. Those MyPillow slippers, I use them too. Okay, I live off the grid, so I have to go out in the winter and then start my generator. Typically, November, December, there's like no sun up here in northern Minnesota. So I have to go out and start that, and I can just walk right out in those slippers. It's beautiful. They got a great bottom and great sole on them. So, all right, folks, thank you so much for listening. I love y'all. Keep fighting the good fight. And thanks for all the new people. Make sure to hit that subscribe, hit those notification bells, and we'll see you on the next episode, all right? Peace out.